Why, hello again, friends. This is Glenn, and you found the Cactus Atlas. And today, Amy and I are going to be exploring some old history in the hills beyond Vulture City, Arizona. Our adventure today brings us to a lonely old cemetery without any marked graves, except for one, I believe, in this cemetery that is thought to date back to 1870. Amy and I thought this was an appropriate place to start today's episode, mainly because it's kind of an enigma here. You don't see headstones. They've all been lost to time as far as I know. And a Boy Scout troop came through here years back, apparently, and put these crosses here. But as far as I know, all of these names have been lost to time, and it's a mystery. The only grave that I know of here that has a headstone is this. This is Francisco Valencia, thought to have died in 1881. I believe of one of the diseases of the time, a young girl whose parents are actually not buried at the cemetery. We know where her parents are buried in Wickenburg, but they're not buried here. I want to say that's probably true, but I can't really know for sure. And I've heard some questionable things or read some questionable things about folks that come out to cemeteries, this very one that I'm at, and they use dowsing rods to identify who's buried where, what the sex of the people are, a pseudoscience. And I'm not sure if that group is responsible if someone came in later to put in that concrete headstone. Hopefully it's not because of dowsing rods. If so, that would be uncool. But maybe that is original. Oh, look at this. I actually think I found another headstone that I've never known about. Let's see what I can find here. This is a Lorenzo E. Jones, 1872 to 1886. Once again, not sure who put this here, or maybe it's someone with a family that knows, but I'd like to know. I'd like to confirm that this wasn't a dowsing rod discovery. If I know that, then I'll feel much happier. The reason why I bring that up, really, the beginning of our episode, is for someone that enjoys history but also values the scientific method, not pseudoscience, using old records and documents to date things, to find things. That's the only way I'm gonna know it's real. I'm not gonna buy anything else. It's just not my belief system. But I get worried because some of this stuff ends up on Find a Grave, and then people start to say it and quote it as if it's fact. That's all I'm gonna say about that today. But for me, it's all a mystery. And until we find evidence to counter it, it's gonna remain a mystery. I've started to ask some of these questions, you know, in Tombstone at the courthouse, and one tip I was given is maybe something like U of A, like a university, would have archives and records for that, for something like Tombstone, which was a much bigger town than what we're talking about here in its day. But you would think with this much death, this many loved ones gone, there's gotta be one scrap out there that has someone's name on it so we can prove and give these people a memory again. I don't know the significance of this, but you know, someone's left a lot of toys here, a lot of we see a lot of toy cars and just rubber duckies and other things, and I'm wondering if it's because folks think that these are children buried here and they're leaving them toys, because each little grave has like a little toy, plastic toy truck or something on it, or toy car. Now how frightening would that be though if these were all children and you know there was a big epidemic that came through in the 1800s here and just wiped out families and stuff. I've seen that at other cemeteries, but it's definitely feasible. You can see out where Slim is parked outside of the cemetery here, and you see a bunch of like old piles of dirt and stuff. Vulture City, a modern mining operation, a big pit mine, as well as the historic portion that's left today, is right out beyond all of that stuff. And it's part of our story today as we basically try to circumnavigate the private property on BLM land and end up on the other side to find some hopefully still standing historic structures from the era. Verde Flat also marks the beginning of the route that Amy and I plotted through the desert today. Right at Verde Flat Cemetery, which is easy to find on Google. Don't make me Google that for you. Figure it out, it's not hard. And we're actually going to be driving down this road for a while and presumably hooking up with other roads that are even less this is a pretty well maintained road so far, but somewhere out there in them hills is where Amy and I are going. All right, now off into the desert to see if we can navigate around the modern mining operation. We think one might just be able to drive through the private property if they don't have no trespassing signs to cut through to BLM, but Amy and I don't want any trouble. We don't want any problems, so we're 100% trying to keep everything today on public land, so
Speaking of legit. Trouble, there was a pair of boxers
here at the cemetery?
Just like right next to that bush.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, here we go. You ready?
Away we go.
Let's see how good our route finding skills are.
Oh boy.
All right, so I know I talk about this in a lot of episodes. We're using Onyx Offroads, that app, and this time I didn't use somebody else's featured route.
We created our own.
We created our own. I'm following my own little line this time. So as for difficulty, what we're gonna run into out here, we really don't know. I just was reviewing a combination of Onyx satellite imagery, which seems to be out of date compared to Google's, so I switched and looked at Google's, and I see roads, I just don't know the condition they're in. And this road I'm expecting to be fantastic, but we're not going to be on this. We're turning very soon, and then the real adventure probably starts. So, okay, I think this is our turn. There is a gate, but we are entering BLM land, so I think this is probably here for cattle. There's no sign saying no trespassing, so you know, this should be legitimate.
It's 100% an arid.
Oh yeah, there's a mine up in them hills there. That is cool.
Come on, homie, pick up those feet. I'm raring to go. Let's speed this up, shall we?
All right, we open the gate and just, you know, this is Bureau of Land Management land, public land, so this is, we're not trespassing. Usually if it was private land and someone didn't want you there, there'd be signs saying no trespassing, we're gonna shoot you and all this stuff. I gotta go close the gate, but typically you got these gates here because they have free range cattle in the area, so that's why that. Basically the rule I heard is if you found it closed, leave it closed. If you found it open, leave it open. That's what I've heard, so. All right, let me go close the gate.
Let's go, vroom vroom.
I think we got about 4 miles total to get to the stop we want to get to, and we'll kind of maybe tell that story here on the way. Here we go with the road.
Here we go.
We'll see if this is gonna be ugly. I'm not looking to completely trash my truck again today. So if it starts to be like,
that's the problem with satellite, is you can't really tell. Everything looks flat.
It does, and you just see like these Palo Verdes that look like sporadic bushes, and then sometimes you get those pinstripes all over. So I don't know. I want to figure out how to fix that problem myself so I can keep slim looking handsome.
Oh shucks.
Before I do more damage. I know I sound like a prima donna, but you know, like I said, we're in this for the history as opposed to the off-roading. I would say if we had to rank it, although the off-roading is fun too. Pretty bumpy. Okay, so what we really are coming out here today is the final destination of this particular off-roading drive, which are things hopefully from the same era-ish as the cemetery. I'm gonna guess maybe a little bit later. I'm gonna guess turn of the century, early 1900s maybe.
Probably, yeah.
But they're two wooden structures on BLM land, right outside the border, probably within
pretty close to it,
100 feet of the private, you know, modern day mining operation. And we believe they are buildings of the Vulture City era. For those of you that know Vulture City, if you've watched our channel, you know about it well. And we think they're both labeled online on the internet as schoolhouses, both of them.
Yeah, one of them probably is.
Yeah, one of them probably is, but we're hoping we can go inside and find maybe the remnants of a chalkboard or something that will give us definitive evidence of that. Otherwise, we're not going to make any definitive statements, but we'll tell you if we think it's feasible or not, at the least. Yeah. I forgot my dowsing rod, so I'm sorry. I went there again. I gotta stop. I'm not looking to pick fights. Although I am also one for giving credit where credit is due. Today's adventure and this whole thing was really put onto our radar by a viewer in a comment, right? And
It was,
mentioned like, hey, you know, noticed on BLM land outside of Vulture City are these other structures. So, and that gave us the idea and desire to do it. Otherwise, I didn't know about those.
Yeah. Basically said that we'd have to bushwhack our way.
Yep.
Or take Slim.
And I'll say thank you to the viewer. You probably know who you are, but I don't like to put people on the spot if we don't know them. So that's why I don't mention names. But to think though, this is more akin to what Henry Wickenburg in the 1860s, wandering around back here, saw on dirt road, of course, just probably bushwhacking through areas like this, finding gold and then discovering what would become Arizona's most important gold mine in history and a mine responsible for the development of Phoenix. I mean, that's pretty huge. So Mr. Wickenburg is super important in Arizona history. I never had heard of him though before I moved out here. So this is pretty rutted here, but you know, once again, I prefer these little spots than the really rocky spots. So this looks kind of sketchy, but we got this. I'm gonna actually do this in low gear.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah, and we're gonna get a little stripe, I think, here. I don't know why someone put like a yellow flag on it, like, oh, watch out, why not just trim it off? Like, I'm gonna bring hedge trimmers with me, man. Like,
Right?
it's just
The battery operated hedge trimmers we have just go yeah as we pass by.
Yep.
I'll just lean out the window.
All right, low gear for this. And it's just easier. You can go slow, and then the dirt is loose, so rather than get stuck halfway up and then leave it in neutral and forget I'm on neutral.
I was just about to give you a hard time about that.
I know. I'm not going to do that again.
That was fun, though.
All right, here we go. You ready? All
Charge!
right. Charge! I mean, we're making this maybe a little bit more dramatic than it needs to be. I mean, it's still, like, you know, when you're not used to this, though, it's like, it's pretty scary at first, but I'm getting to be an expert, I think, now.
I think you missed that branch.
I'm getting good at it. Yeah, the desert pinstripe situation back here has been fine so far. There's not, meaning I haven't really gotten any new ones. Oh my goodness, this is a steep in here. I think we're okay.
What? Where?
Like right here.
I see it.
We're not technically done with the dirt, but I would say the traversal across the desert part we are. Now we're hooking up with a BLM route. I forget its number, like 9088 or something like that. I'm gonna go over here. It looks pretty major, and it heads straight down towards the private property.
9088.
Hey, how did I remember that? Sometimes I'm good. See, I do study a little bit in advance. I'm excited to see this. I really am. Like, I am super stoked because I'm such a fan of Vulture City history and everything that this is a treat. Hopefully they're still standing and they haven't burnt down or anything.
Yeah.
Because they are made of wood.
They are. But I remember the original, well, I guess I shouldn't say the original owner, but the previous owner.
Yep.
When we first came and all the buildings were just wrecked, I remember he made mention of the schoolhouses. And ever since then, I always just wanted to go see them.
Yeah, and we thought too, there's that silly show that admittedly we watched, the Ghost Adventures crew.
Yeah.
That if I had to be honest, that might have been what put Vulture City on our map in the very beginning, in the early 2000s, maybe. I don't know. You're the one that found it, but
I wasn't here until 2000.
Yeah. But all those shows, you know, I like them because of I think haunted history is fun. Do I believe in it? No, but it's just fun, and you learn a little bit about like the legends, I guess, the stuff that I find is probably not substantiated history, but
my favorite part's always the beginning where they're talking the history.
Yeah. Saguaro.
My heart is like kind of racing just to see.
To see what, if it's here still?
Yeah.
Me too. he kind of gets nervous, but I'm gonna say here's where we have more issues. Yeah, I'd say right. That looks correct. See, it all works great if everything's working. But you see it kind of very briefly gets stuck.
I see it. They don't.
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm talking as if you guys can see it. Had a QA tester I saw. We had a comment that used to test these types of apps, and it was that person's opinion that there might be a bug in the software if it's not updating. But I'm also a developer, so I try to think of things, you know, technically and what could happen.
And I'm trying to determine if it's old or new.
Because this does butt up right on that property, so I'm gonna guess, like, yeah, I can't tell. No, I think it's not what you think it is. That's it. I see it. That's one of the two.
Oh, okay.
Because the property's right there.
Chimney there?
Yep.
Oh, sweet.
And those houses beyond it are on the private property today. So we will get the drone up and we'll take a peek over, as we are permitted to fly here in BLM land and there's no controlled airspace or other restrictions. So everything we're doing today should be 100% street legal. And why we didn't want any gray areas and we decided to do this all on BLM. So nobody can accuse us of trespassing or any other kind of silliness. But
we did our homework.
Look at this. Okay, well, I'm stoked because one of them's still standing.
Yes.
Completely.
Yes.
And
there's the little like playground.
Yeah, so maybe it really was a schoolhouse.
I think it was.
I didn't even know there was a playground here.
Oh yeah, I mentioned that to you. And there's still glass. Oh my god, oh my god.
Can we go inside is the question. I think we can. Yeah, it's wide open. So this is one of two. There's the other place right there.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Sweet. Oh, they're locked.
Well, there's a side door that's wide open.
Oh,
so
is there?
You're good.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
And that one's wide open too.
Yeah.
So we're exploring the heck out of this, don't worry.
You're welcome.
All right, guys, Vulture City, outside of Vulture City. So that looks old, like that wooden house. This is quite a find. This is amazing. I am loving this. I mean, this is awesome history and one of the finer wooden structures we found out here. I'm getting some cues from Amy, who's inside, saying this is a masterpiece. And based on what she told me, then I think this would have to be a schoolhouse from the Vulture City era. See, this is more akin to the old Vulture City that Amy and I once knew back in the early 2000s. I would say this is in better shape than Vulture City used to be. It just used to be piles of rubble everywhere, and we didn't know about this. I don't know if they let you go up here back in the day, because it probably has always been on BLM land, I'm guessing, not the private land, but you know, you could just see how paper thin this wood is now, like the siding, but it's still here. All right, Amy's kind of touring it, and like I said, she's giving it huge thumbs up. All this old stuff too, like this furniture, it's just weird that it's been left here like this. The old schoolhouse. Wow. There's some chalk on the board, which I'm sure is recent. Come, wives and friends, and something, and stop playing. They will come for you. I love ghost kids. See, I told you, there's always, everybody always thinks the old school is the haunted place. Why? You can see this old floor here too. I'm trying to look at the nails. They look round. They don't look like square head nails. This doesn't seem like a, as old as you would think. I'm gonna guess this is probably a 1900s, maybe early 1900s structure. Could certainly be 1800s also. I'm not thinking 1870s, maybe 1890s or something like that, but the roof is in great shape. You can also see there's electricity in here. So I don't know, like over the years it may have been used or lived in even. Here's another amazing find. There's an old piano in here. It says Maynard, Chicago. I know nothing about Maynard. I'm guessing it's probably home to mice now. There's lots of little cholla prickers and poop. See all that? I don't know if that disease that the rats carry is prevalent out here. I don't see any warning signs, but I'm gonna keep my fingers away from that because there's like some diseases, some kind of virus that those things can carry. See warnings in a lot of old places like this. They got that green color. I don't know if that is supposed to be a calming color. I've heard it is, so I wonder if they painted it that color to keep the kids calm. Kind of an ugly yellowish green almost, but a lot of things saying talk to the ghost children. I don't know, what do you think, Amy? I would say this is probably the find of the year.
Yeah.
This is great. Like, you don't get to see stuff like this.
My little heart is going pitter-pat just because this is so awesome.
I was saying earlier, I don't know if you probably couldn't hear me, that this is more akin to the old Vulture City days where you would just do a self-guided thing, and I would say this is in better shape than those buildings used to even be by far.
This is still standing. I mean, I'm looking at the wood up above and it actually looks relatively new.
It does. I'm curious if they did some restoration to this thing maybe, but
yeah,
that's cool with me. I mean, the rest of it certainly.
The metal looks pretty new.
Yeah, it does. You can see the shingles outside though. The siding is very like thin and rotted. So
yeah, it's very dried out.
For the most part, the floor feels like legit, very, you know.
Yeah.
I would say definitely. I would give this the Vulture City era seal of approval. All right, you got these really old stools out here, but there's a back room too. Amy said it's kind of creepy. It's a mess. Looks like they had a kitchen back here, and I would say running water. There's some maybe things to help us date. There's a faucet. Doesn't mean the building's not old. It could have been, you know, added to over time. But I almost wonder if the schoolmaster or teacher lived here on the premises, because that wasn't uncommon back then. And of course, the obligatory target practice that you have to do. But yeah, this might have been the room that, my guess is this is where a school teacher would have, you know, lived. And there's closets here. Lots of rat poo everywhere. But small closets, you could see they would hang their stuff up here. Old hangers too, look at that. That is weird. I've never seen a hanger quite like that. It's like wrapped in some kind of twine or something. Now another observation I made, and this would be something electricians would know, something I talked about with Amy's dad. This is the older style of outlet. You don't have that third prong in there. Back in the days I was talking about, you know, when you would get shocked, you know, a lot more easily. So does anybody know from a date perspective, you know, can that tell us anything? I'm just showing touches like that because those things might help us date. But once again, does that necessarily mean that this was built before electricity? It probably was here when electricity was here, but I guess you could have retrofitted a house with wiring and stuff after the fact, so who knows? You can see the modern mining operation over there. There's some other historic properties and homes out beyond here that if we kept going straight, it would take us on to the private property of the mine. And some of the residences still stand today, and I don't know the status of what the mining company is going to do with them. They seem to have worked around a lot, but I don't think that's going to stop them if money's involved. I'm going to have to think, I'm going to guess this is an old outhouse. I see a light bulb in there, so it had electricity. You see two concrete square things, which I don't know if those were where there's like a hole deep in there, so I'm guessing those were the two toilets, maybe? Lots of evidence of those pack rats in there, all the, you know, you can see all that stuff. But presumably an old outhouse. Another interesting observation I'm making here, and I can't say this for sure, but these saguaro are too perfectly lined up to have been planted like that. I think naturally they're not going to grow in a perfect line, but I've seen old ranches, you know, in pictures, ranchers would do this kind of thing. So I'm wondering if this was Vulture City era work. the saguaro can live long enough to make that feasible. If they were planted back then, I think they start getting their arms around 70 years of age or something like that. So if they were planted small or whatever, a lot of them don't have arms yet. It's feasible that it could be from that era. And we are right up against the private property. You see residences like that look like they're from the era. There's another one out there. There's a whole bunch. And then on the other side, I think I might see the powerhouse at Vulture City. So the tourist area that you can pay your admission and go tour, get your wedding on, anything like that. I think that's right there on the other side. And that house up there is the one that I mistakenly thought was the schoolhouse. But I think that was lived in up until maybe 10 years ago. That one up there by one of the former owners of the land. It's hard to know from this side, but we are right behind Vulture City. Now, but as mentioned before, we are not on that property line. We are like right up on it, and this is the edge of BLM, so we still have breathing room, and these two structures are not, according to all of our information, not part of the mining operations land. So hopefully they're not going to get sold one day. I don't know if the BLM can give away the land. If so, probably kiss these things goodbye, because I can tell you from what I see from what the mining company's doing, they don't give a damn. All right, enough surmising. This I've seen referred to as a schoolhouse also. See a chimney in this one. It looks like it might be a wide open big room like the other one, so maybe they both are. But I would say this one definitely has more age, and I can see from here that floor is buckling. This might be further back in time than the first one, I would say. Alrighty, yeah, this is what I like. Look at that floor. That is old. That is much older than the first structure based on the condition this seems to be in today. Although maybe it was very similar to the school, like that, whatever that's called. I don't know what that building technique is or that material, but the school did have that. So they could both be very old, and then over time they were modernized. You do see evidence of electricity in this building also. But a school, I'm struggling to see this one being a schoolhouse. One other thing that's interesting though is like whoever built this door, they were short. If I walked like without bending down, I would hit my head on that, guaranteed. Gotta bend down a little bit. Look at this. Like this floor is very bowed in here, but it feels sturdy. It feels really sturdy, surprisingly sturdy. But I'm almost wondering, this is tough. It could have been a schoolhouse too, I don't know. I see this though, and I'm thinking workshop, but this is kind of far away from where the mining operation is, so I would think this is probably more residential, or maybe a schoolhouse it could be. No chalkboards yet though. Yeah, this chimney's kind of interesting because I don't think Amy can see any. You can't see anything from your side, right? This is weird. If you see it at this place, there is no fireplace. There's like wood, what appears to be a chimney. Let's see if it's hollow. I can't tell there that they boarded it up. I think it obviously was a chimney. We saw it from the outside, but there's no fireplace. So if it used to have a fireplace, it got replaced with this strange thing. Amy has a great guess on this chimney because you do see those holes up there. So could this have been like connected to like a stove or something like that? And the vent would have gone up to that, and there would have been like a bigger metal stove or something out here, or heater. That seems feasible. It's a good observation. And this is beyond the mystery building, and they built a little porch back here. Probably if we're just chilling, I'm guessing. Whatever they were doing back here, maybe this was like a little eating area or something. I don't see evidence of like a room that someone was living in. Yeah, you gotta be careful because you can see here the wood's very flimsy and rotted. and I could see clear through to the bottom, so I don't want to step on that. But maybe this is an old closet. I don't see any like hangers like we did in the other one, but some kind of storage closet. Yeah, there's concrete down there, Amy noticed, and we're trying to figure out what was this. Could it have been some kind of a shower? But yeah, there's no pipes or anything in there, so I have no idea. Very interesting. I think for me, what I'm willing to say here is I don't know if this one was a schoolhouse. We're pretty convinced the other one was. It was pretty obvious to us. So we're not going to make any determinations. We can't find any definitive evidence in this one to say this was a schoolhouse. The only thing it's got going for itself is that these rooms are pretty large. They don't seem partitioned, making me think that whatever it was to serve as like a group of people maybe, but that doesn't really mean anything either. You could have had someone maybe even repurposing this as a home, you know, at some point. We just don't know. If any of you out there know that, of course, though, you know what to do. Comment down below. All right, well, there was your little mini scouting adventure with Amy and I today, and I'd say we came up with some treasures today to research, and they're still standing. So that was the first thing we wanted to make sure of, so they're going strong. Hope you enjoyed this one, and come back for more adventures like this as we explore and uncover the hidden areas in the backcountry of Arizona. See you on the next one.